When 3 fake cops stormed our ranch claiming HOA authority, they expected fear. What they got was a war zone of traps, drones, and manure. My grandpa, a retired bomb tech with a grudge, was ready. They came to take our land. They left humiliated in handcuffs and covered in fertilizer. I've always said there's 2 kinds of peace in this world. The kind you get from silence, and the kind you have to fight for. Ours was the second. Our ranch sat quiet at the edge of Silver Ridge Lakes, a gated community that popped up 5 years ago like a tick on a hound. We'd been here long before the asphalt roads, fancy cul-de-sacs, or manicured fake ponds came along. This land was in my family since Teddy Roosevelt still had teeth, and it wasn't going anywhere. I live out here with my grandson, Jesse. Good kid. 18, a little too attached to his phone, but he's learning fast. After his mama passed, I took him in. Figured he'd do better with fences and feed buckets than city walls and grief counselors. I taught him how to fix a fence with baling wire and how to handle a .22 caliber without taking his own foot off. He taught me what a meme is. Fair trade. Things were quiet until the first letter arrived. Fancy envelope logo that looked like a golf course threw up. Silver Ridge Lakes Homeowners Association, Office of Compliance. Already sounded like someone with a clipboard and a god complex. It read something like, "Dear property owner, we are notifying you of upcoming plans for the Community Road Expansion Project. Your southern property line is within the projected improvement zone. We look forward to your cooperation." I'd seen cleaner threats during my time in Kandahar. I didn't reply. Instead, I tossed it in the wood stove and let Jesse film me lighting it up for one of his YouTube shorts. He added a Western soundtrack and called it HOA Letter versus Texas Kindling. Got a few thousand views. Didn't take long for the next one to come. Then another. Then a whole packet stapled and everything explaining how the HOA believed our land was informally annexed into the Silver Ridge Lakes Greenway corridor due to a clerical rezoning issue. That was a new one. I read it while sitting on the porch with my coffee, dog asleep at my feet, rooster crowing in the background like punctuation. "Jesse," I said, "these bastards are getting creative." He started filming me reading the letters dramatically, using different accents. HOA Karen became a series on his channel. I played her once using a red bathrobe and curlers screeching about communal visual harmony. People loved it. But behind the jokes, I knew where this was heading. HOA types don't knock twice. They escalate. Jesse, being young, thought it was just funny suburban theater. I knew better. You don't get 3 certified letters and a drone sighting in the same week by coincidence. One night around 11, Jesse spotted headlights just sitting by the south fence line. We killed the porch light and watched. Black SUV, no plates. They sat for about 5 minutes, then backed out slow. Didn't even turn the engine off. The next morning, we found fresh tire tracks in the dry dirt right near the boundary marker I'd welded out of scrap steel and concrete. I called an old buddy from my Army days, Ray. Lived half a mile east. Former sniper turned wildlife conservationist. Told him to keep his eyes peeled. "You expecting a war, Walt?" he asked. "No," I said. "But they might be." The day after that, I found someone had posted a laminated public access path, future expansion site sign near our back trail. Zip-tied it right to my fence post. That was bold. I took it down and replaced it with a piece of plywood I spray-painted myself. "Private property trespassers will be fertilized." Jesse laughed his ass off. But that night I sat with a beer and an old notepad and started sketching some plans. Nothing lethal, just deterrence. I wasn't going to wait around for some HOA stooges in polo shirts to start bulldozing my fence. Next day, I called our family attorney in Austin, sweet-talking him out of golf to confirm that yes, our land was not and never had been part of Silver Ridge Lakes or their ridiculous bylaws. He also confirmed they had no legal claim, no zoning support, and no official easement. But, he added, if they push through a county variance hearing, they might try to backdoor you through procedural law, which meant I had to play defense and offense now. Jesse suggested we go public. Make them the joke before they make us the villains, he said. He started filming a new series, HOA versus Grandpa Walt. I told him to keep my face out of frame unless I was wearing my best hat. One of the clips, me setting up a fake HOA welcome station with a mannequin and a garden gnome, got picked up on TikTok by some libertarian page. Within days, the HOA letters stopped being just letters. The next one came with a glossy brochure. Community roadway, connecting our neighborhood to nature. There it was in fine print, the proposed community access point, highlighted in blue, running straight through our back pasture to the lake. The HOA had dreams of turning our southern line into a shared pathway, and I had a feeling they were done asking nicely. That night, Jesse looked up from his laptop and said, "Grandpa, they're posting about you on the HOA's private Facebook group. Some lady called you a belligerent old freeloader squatting on premium land." I smiled. "Well," I said, "I guess it's time to give 'em a show." You know that moment when something stops being annoying and becomes serious? That happened the day we got the thick envelope, not a letter, a dossier. Jesse brought it in from the mailbox like it might bite him. The thing weighed almost as much as a phone book and came with a gold-embossed cover that read, "Silver Ridge Lakes Development Initiative. Anytime someone uses more than 3 nouns in a title, run." Inside was a glossy presentation full of drone shots, watercolor renderings, smiling families walking dogs that cost more than my truck, and a section labeled Projected Phase 3 Expansion. That phrase alone smelled like money and litigation. I flipped through until I hit a map, a big one. My ranch was outlined in dotted red. The caption said, "Potential easement acquisition through private negotiation." Under it was a number, a very large number. They were willing to pay a facilitator bonus, which is HOA speak for bribe, to whoever secured the access rights. Not to me, to them. There it was, the smoking gun. They weren't just trying to get a path. They planned to sell that access point to a developer for millions. No wonder they were suddenly treating my 40 acres like communal playground space. I whistled low, sat back in my chair, and tapped the number printed underneath. "Jesse," I said, "take a look. How many zeros do you count?" He squinted. "More than I can process without crying." I leaned back. Someone in Silver Ridge Lake stood to get rich, incredibly rich, if we folded. The next morning, I noticed 2 SUVs parked near the east fence line. One of them had a logo for Lakeside Devco, the developer mentioned in the packet. They sent men in reflective vests walking the boundary like they owned it. One of them even tried to move my cattle panel fence to improve visibility. I walked out with my coffee and my shotgun casually slung over one shoulder. Unloaded, safety on. But nobody needs to know that. They scrambled like quail. A week later, HOA switched tactics, from pressure to public humiliation, and they were good at it. First came the flyers, slipped into mailboxes and taped to community boards around the development. Southern property owner refuses community road access, endangering public safety. Underneath, a grainy zoomed-in photo of me taken from who knows where, probably by someone hiding behind a hedge. Jesse found the digital version circulating online, complete with a comment thread calling me territorial, unstable, and my personal favorite, an aggressive anti-growth extremist. That one actually made me chuckle. Then came the anonymous complaint to animal control, claiming our cattle were blocking a public thoroughfare. The officer who showed up was apologetic. He knew the area. He left with steaks from our freezer. But that wasn't the punch. The punch came when we found out HOA had contacted a local reporter. Jesse discovered the article online titled, "Rancher Rejects Community Progress. New Road Project Delayed." The article painted me as some relic of the frontier, selfishly hoarding nature from the community like a dragon hoarding gold. I could practically hear Karen, their HOA president, dictating the quotes. Jesse paced the living room, furious. "They're trying to turn you into the bad guy. They're building a narrative." I smiled slowly. Two can play that game. We set up lights on the porch and filmed a new video. Jesse titled it, "HOA Claims My Ranch is Public Land. Let's fact-check their fantasy." I read their brochure aloud in a movie trailer voice, then held up our deed, a thick, dusty original from 1937, and slapped it on the table like a mic drop. The video blew up. People online loved the absurdity of HOA bureaucracy trying to boss around a rancher with a shotgun and a 40-acre inheritance. Comments poured in, cheering us on, laughing at the HOA, asking when part 2 was coming. The next morning, HOA tried to regroup, but I'd planted an informational mine under them, a slow-burning one. See, a few days before, I had mailed a very official-looking letter on fake HOA letterhead to the local newspapers, thanking them for participating in our community compliance outreach experiment. The reporter called HOA for comment. They were not pleased. Within hours, Silver Ridge Lake's Facebook group went into meltdown. Screenshots circulated, people blaming Karen for the media embarrassment. I sat on the porch drinking coffee, watching the online wildfire spread, all without me having to lift a finger. Jesse checked the comments every 10 seconds. "Grandpa, I think you just made them panic." "Good," I said. "Panicked people make mistakes." Out by the fence, the SUV from the developer reappeared. Men got out. They didn't post flyers or take pictures this time. They just pointed at our land and talked on the phone. That meant only one thing. They were done negotiating. They were preparing to escalate. There's a sound you get used to living out here. The rustle of wind through dry grass, the crunch of gravel under boot heels, the occasional coyote song. But that morning, what I heard wasn't natural. It was a chainsaw. I was feeding the dogs when Jesse sprinted in from the fence line, panting. "Grandpa," he gasped, "they're cutting through the mesquite." I didn't ask who they were. I grabbed my boots, stepped out onto the porch, and there they were. 4 men in neon vests, one of them already waist-deep in brush with a saw, another swinging a machete like it was some jungle expedition. Behind them, a flatbed truck with landscaping company logos, Green Path Solutions. Never heard of them. The men didn't stop when they saw me. In fact, one waved, like I was supposed to be grateful. I walked down toward the fence, slow, letting the tension hang like humidity. When I was within earshot, I said, "What exactly do you boys think you're doing?" The one with the clipboard smiled. "Routine beautification. We received a directive from the Homeowners Association to prep the community trail corridor." He gestured toward the brush, then, I kid you not, pointed at my fence. "This segment is due for visual integration." "Visual integration," I repeated. "Through private property?" "Sir," he said in that tone people use when they think they're explaining gravity to a toddler, "this trail has been earmarked in the revised HOA Greenway plan. We're just here to get it started." I looked down at the boundary marker, welded steel post clearly outside their development. Then I looked back up. "My fence is older than your entire HOA, and you just trespassed across it." He blinked. "We were told this was disputed territory. That's funny, I said, because the deed isn't disputed, neither is the Constitution. He opened his mouth again, but I cut him off by raising my phone. This is being recorded. You and your men have 60 seconds to get off my property before this becomes a police report. And if you touch that fence again, it becomes a lawsuit. The saw shut off. The machete guy looked disappointed. They packed up. But the message was clear. The HOA had moved from words to action. Now they were testing how far they could push before I snapped. Jesse filmed the whole thing and uploaded a clip titled "Landscaping or Invasion. HOA sends men onto private ranch." It trended locally within hours. The comments section was a battlefield, half of them cheering, half accusing us of stalling community progress. But I didn't care about public opinion, I cared about lines, literal ones. That night I walked the property with a flashlight and a notepad. I checked weak points in the perimeter, made mental notes of the spots where someone might try to sneak through. Then I pulled out my old field sketchbook, the one I hadn't touched since Kandahar, and started drawing layouts. I wasn't planning to hurt anyone, but I could make a mess they'd remember. I started with the old south gate. Hadn't used it in years, but the hinges still held. Jesse and I reinforced it with a remote latch, a little invention of mine made from a tractor motor and garage door parts. Then we camouflaged a narrow livestock path leading to the gate, ran tubing under the trail from the barn to a central junction, and installed a few irrigation upgrades. We called it Operation Wet Welcome. You ever seen what happens when you trigger a dozen high-pressure sprinklers loaded with recycled manure slurry? Jesse nearly gagged just testing the system. I considered it a success. Next came the decoy signage. We posted wooden signs at key points. Experimental soil hydration zone. Do not enter. They looked official enough to confuse a bureaucrat. Right next to them, we installed infrared sensors linked to the porch alarm and a floodlight aimed squarely at the trail. Jesse programmed a soundbite to play when motion was detected. My voice recorded saying, "Private property. You've triggered a biohazard protocol. Good luck." For fun, we added a backup drone. Nothing fancy, just an old Phantom rig to hover and blare the national anthem. Not because I'm a flag waver, just because I knew it would freak out anyone who didn't expect it. Ray, my neighbor, brought over a few extra trail cams and helped me rig one of them to his back shed. He also offered to camp out on the ridge with a thermos of coffee and his night vision binoculars. I didn't even ask. He just said, "This smells like a setup and I want to see the fireworks." Meanwhile, the HOA kept poking. More mailers, more press releases. Someone even dropped off a community integration packet at our gate, full of legalese and pastel graphics explaining how nature belonged to everyone. Jesse edited the pamphlet into a slideshow and added dramatic music. We posted it with a new video, breaking down the HOA's Manifest Destiny plan with pop-up sarcasm. That one really took off. So did the HOA's blood pressure, apparently. Karen, yes, her name really was Karen, issued a statement in their neighborhood group calling us antagonists disrupting the cooperative spirit of Silver Ridge Lakes. I framed the quote. It made me laugh every time I looked at it. But I knew the tone was changing. The jokes stopped landing with everyone. Jesse even got an anonymous message from someone in the HOA warning us to back off while we still could. That night, I stayed up late oiling the hinges on the far gate and double-checking the motion sensors. I left a note on the fridge for Jesse. If they come, let the gate open and make sure the cameras are rolling. They always start with paper, letters, pamphlets, warnings. Then they send people. Then they send fear. After the landscaping stunt failed, the HOA shifted tactics. No more brochures about community integration. No more press releases about ecological harmony. Instead, they started showing up, not directly, but often enough that you knew they wanted to be seen. First, it was the cars. SUVs would idle along the edge of the property line, tinted windows up, no plates or temporary tags. Always just far enough away to be technically legal, always close enough to remind you that someone was watching. Some nights they just parked for 10-15 minutes, then pulled away without a sound. Jesse caught them on drone footage once. The video showed two men standing by the fence line with binoculars and what looked like a laser rangefinder. They didn't step over. They didn't have to. That same week, we found 3 public easement signs zip-tied to the barbed wire. Professionally printed. Reflective paint. I tore them down and burned them in the fire barrel. Jesse filmed it, of course, and edited in dramatic music. But this time, he didn't laugh when he watched it back. A few days later, I was checking the west fence when I found it. A camera, nestled up in an oak branch, cleverly angled at the livestock path. Small, solar-powered, Wi-Fi capable. Not ours. I stood there for a long minute staring at it, not angry, not yet, just considering. It was a hunter's camera, but it wasn't a hunter who placed it. This was surveillance. I brought it back to the house and showed Jesse. He didn't say a word, just opened his laptop and ran a signal trace. The feed was encrypted but pinged off a relay that matched the network name used at the Silver Ridge Community Clubhouse. Ballsy, I said. Or stupid, Jesse replied. That night we added another floodlight and repositioned our cameras to cover every foot of the southern approach. We put up new signs, more aggressive this time. Private property. If you can read this, you're too damn close. Ray dropped by that evening with a thermos and a .30 caliber slung across his back. Said he'd keep watch from the ridge just in case things got sporty. He wasn't joking. We were eating dinner when the next escalation hit. A knock at the door. We weren't expecting anyone. Jesse grabbed the indoor camera monitor and froze. It's the sheriff. Sure enough, Deputy Griggs stood on the porch, hat in hand. Polite but uneasy. Said they'd received a complaint about erratic livestock behavior and unsafe fencing. I invited him in, offered him cornbread, and walked him around the property myself. He knew it was bogus. He said as much. They're fishing, he muttered, kicking at a patch of gravel. I nodded. They're gonna need a bigger hook. He chuckled, filed the visit as non-actionable, and left. But it was clear the HOA had started pulling strings. Later that week, Jesse got a direct message on social media, a burner account, no profile photo. All it said was, "Back off while you still can, you're not untouchable." That's when I knew we had them scared. Bullies don't threaten unless they feel power slipping. So I turned up the heat. I went online and posted a fake casting call. Seeking actors for an immersive HOA-themed performance piece. Costumes provided. Must be able to follow absurd instructions with a straight face. I listed the HOA's clubhouse address as the meetup point. 2 days later, Ray sent me a photo from his phone. A dozen people in ridiculous costumes standing outside the Silver Ridge clubhouse holding scripts and looking confused. HOA called the sheriff. We laughed till we cried. But the real win came the next morning. I woke up to find a manila envelope stuffed in our mailbox. No return address, but inside were copies of emails, real ones, between HOA board members. One of them, presumably Karen, wrote, "If we can't get the county to move on the variance, we'll have to accelerate direct measures. I don't care if we have to send the compliance guys in person. It's time he understands we're not afraid." I stared at that line for a long time. Compliance guys, not code enforcement, not legal. Guys, I handed it to Jesse, who read it twice and then said, "So that's it. They're going to send people." I nodded. Time to finish setting the table. That afternoon, we did a full systems test on Operation Wet Welcome. Sprinklers, check. Sensor trip, check. Gate latch response, loud and clean. I replaced the fertilizer mixture with a fresh batch that smelled worse than anything legal. Jesse ran final tests on the drone. I made sure all cameras had full batteries. Ray confirmed he'd be up on the ridge with a clear view and a radio. That evening, I sat on the porch as the sun dropped behind the hills, the last light spilling across the pasture like a promise. Tomorrow they'd come, and this time, I wouldn't be the one crossing the line. You ever have one of those mornings where you wake up and know something's coming? Not because of a gut feeling or superstition, but because you planned for it? That was me. I woke up at dawn, well before the roosters started their nonsense, made a full pot of coffee, the real black sludge kind, not the hipster battery acid Jesse drinks, and sat on the porch with my boots off and my hat low, just listening. The pasture was quiet, too quiet. Ray's voice crackled through the walkie on the table. Movement, black SUV, heading up the East Road. You were right, Walt. 3 of them. I smiled. I didn't rush. I stood, stretched my back till it popped, and walked inside to wake Jesse. They're here, I said. He sat up instantly like a Marine hearing reveille. You serious? Put the cameras on, and bring the manual. The manual was a giant, obviously fake binder Jesse made that read. HOA Constitution Volume 1, Community Enforcement Protocols and War Crimes Edition. It was completely blank inside, just something to mess with them. By the time we stepped onto the porch, the SUV was already bouncing down our dirt road like a whale trying to gallop. It came to a halt in front of the house, kicking up a whole dust storm behind it. 3 men stepped out. Matching black polos, khaki pants, dark sunglasses, utility belts that looked like they came off an eBay costume rack. Each of them wore a shiny badge pinned crooked on their chest that said Community Compliance Officer. I kid you not, one of them was chewing gum like he was auditioning for Die Hard 9, HOA Vengeance. The leader stepped forward, middle-aged, shaved head, bulked-up gym muscles stuffed into a too-tight shirt with the words, Enforcement Team, printed across the chest. He pointed at me like he was calling out a fugitive on cops. Sir, you are in violation of multiple HOA regulations concerning obstruction of access and failure to comply with community resource sharing. We are here to conduct an on-site inspection in accordance with Articles 8 through 14. I blinked. What community are you referring to? Silver Ridge Lakes, he barked. I grinned. You see any lakes? He didn't like that. Step aside, he said, chest puffed out. You're interfering with an official inspection. You're interfering with a nap, I replied. Now I'll ask nicely. State your legal authority or turn around and bounce those loafers off my property line. He pulled out a laminated ID that looked like it was printed at Staples. It had a clip art eagle and the words, Community Oversight Division, written in papyrus font. Jesse zoomed in with the camera. Wow, Jesse said. Did you guys get those from the pretend-to-be federal section at Party City? That pushed them over the edge. We're conducting an inspection with or without your cooperation. I shrugged. Be my guest. I opened the south gate for them, held it wide, smiling like a Walmart greeter. They marched in confidently, stomping through the tall grass in their polished tactical boots, scanning the area like they were about to uncover a meth lab. I followed behind, hands in my pockets. The moment the third guy stepped over the buried sensor, it all began. First, the gate slammed shut behind them with a loud K-chunka. Jesse had rigged it with a remote tractor solenoid. It sealed faster than a bear trap. The men spun around. One reached for his fake walkie. What the? Then came the sprinklers. 12 nozzles erupted around them in a perfect circle, blasting high-pressure streams of fermented compost tea. A glorious geyser of liquid shame. Within seconds, they were soaked in brown, chunky horror, flailing and yelling, slipping in the mud like newborn calves on ice. Jesse triggered the second phase. From above, the drone buzzed to life with a mechanical hum and a flashing light. It hovered about 10 feet up, playing the national anthem at full volume, distorted just enough to sound like a nightmare karaoke version. As the anthem played, the loudspeaker on the porch kicked in with my recorded voice. You have entered a restricted agricultural testing zone. You are now covered in bioactive fertilizer. Please remain calm. You will be decontaminated. Eventually. The big guy screamed, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Another tried to climb the fence. He slipped, flipped, and landed face first into a puddle of what I can only describe as vintage cow regret. Jesse zoomed in on the slow-motion fall. I swear we'll frame that shot. I stayed back, sipping my coffee like it was a Sunday picnic. Ray chimed in from his ridge position on the walkie. I got him on camera from up here. You want me to call the cavalry? I replied. Already did. Should be any second. And like clockwork, we heard the sirens in the distance. A sheriff's cruiser came bumping down the dirt road, lights on but siren off, that low, humiliating flash of authority. Deputy Griggs stepped out, took one look at the scene, and tilted his head. "Walt," he said, "you've been busy." I pointed with my coffee mug. "Trespassers. Impersonating law enforcement. I figured I'd contain the problem until you got here." The deputy walked up to the soaking trio, now dripping and squelching like overused mops. "Do you have any legal identification?" They tried to talk over each other. One guy pointed at me. "He attacked us with whatever the hell that was." Griggs raised an eyebrow. "You mean sprinklers?" "It smelled like death." "It's composted alfalfa and pig manure," I offered helpfully. One of them gagged audibly. In the end, all three were cuffed and stuffed into the back of the cruiser. Charges included criminal trespass, impersonating an officer, and unlawful intimidation. Griggs read them their rights while Jesse filmed from a respectful distance, commentary and all. As the SUV pulled away, Jesse muttered, "That was better than Netflix." We walked back toward the house, soaked boots squishing in the aftermath. Jesse was already uploading the footage. I glanced at the gate, still locked, still standing, and still ours. The thing about kicking a hornet's nest is, if you do it on camera, people will take sides. And thanks to Jesse's obsessive need to record every ridiculous moment of our lives, we had about 4 different angles of the fertilizer ambush, complete with drone footage, slow-motion collapse, and a soundtrack of screeching men soaked in what I kindly referred to as organic sludge. The internet loved it. Within 12 hours, the video hit 50,000 views. Within 24, it was circulating on news aggregators and showing up on morning talk shows. Some anchor out of Dallas called me the Manure Maverick. Jesse put that on a t-shirt the same night. But it wasn't just online buzz. Something real started shifting. The sheriff's department opened a formal investigation into the 3 compliance officers. Turned out, none of them were licensed security contractors. One had a background in car repossession. Another worked at a gym. The third, the big one, had previously been let go from a real estate firm for unorthodox eviction strategies. You can imagine what that means. But the real nail in the coffin was what came next. One morning, about a week after the incident, Ray knocked on my door holding a fat envelope. No return address again. Inside were printed emails, meeting notes, and screenshots from an internal HOA group chat. Not public, not scrubbed. At the center of it all, Karen Dreyfus, our very own HOA president. The emails were damning. One quoted her directly. We must secure that property line before the end of Q2 or the developer will pull the offer. If the legal path fails, use physical presence. Walt is a dinosaur. He'll fold under pressure. Another. Get the guys from Access Solutions. Don't worry about licenses, just uniforms. Make it look formal. And my personal favorite. We've come too far to let some crusty cowboy ruin the Lakeside Greenway initiative. Jesse and I read them in silence. Then I said, I'm keeping that one framed. We handed everything over to the sheriff, who looked genuinely surprised. The investigation went from local nuisance to county-level fraud case in under 2 days. Then it got worse. For them. Turns out the HOA had been negotiating backroom deals with the Lakeside Devco, the same developer that wanted to build their shiny luxury trail. The promised payout, $2.5 million. But only if the HOA delivered uninterrupted access to the lake, and that meant our pasture. Once the emails hit the DA's office, subpoenas flew like dandelion fluff. Karen was served while leaving yoga in front of a full class of retirees. 3 other board members stepped down within 48 hours. The HOA's attorney resigned the same week. The news media caught wind. Suddenly, we weren't just a viral ranch story. We were a case study in HOA overreach. National outlets picked it up. A segment on 60 Minutes aired a week later titled, When the HOA Goes Too Far, The Ranch That Fought Back. They interviewed me. I wore my Sunday hat and didn't smile once. I told them the truth. This isn't about fences or roads. It's about people who think authority comes from paperwork and pressure. But out here, we've got our own kind of law. And it starts with, get off my land. The clip went viral again. But what mattered most was the courtroom. We filed suit. Trespassing, intimidation, attempted coercion, fraud. My lawyer, a cigar-smoking bulldog named Francis Delgado, practically danced into the preliminary hearing waving the printed emails like a holy book. It didn't take long. The court issued an injunction blocking any future HOA improvement projects along our boundary. They ruled that our land was explicitly exempt from Silver Ridge jurisdiction, reaffirmed by both title history and prior zoning decisions. Then, just to sweeten the deal, they fined the HOA for legal misconduct and required them to pay our attorney's fees. But that wasn't the best part. Karen, their fearless leader, was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and impersonation through third-party contractors. Misdemeanors, sure, but enough to force her resignation and ensure she'd never run another HOA again. She left the neighborhood quietly. Her moving truck arrived early one morning. I watched from the porch as they packed up a yoga mat, 3 wicker chairs, and what looked like a fake ficus tree. She didn't even glance toward our ranch. Probably afraid I'd hit her with a water balloon full of irony. After she was gone, something strange happened. Neighbors, the same ones who once ignored us or sneered when we drove past, started waving. A few stopped by with pie. One guy, an ex-HOA voter, brought a 6-pack and muttered, "I didn't know it was like that." Jesse didn't even film him, said it felt too real. And HOA? The interim board voted to freeze all expansion projects and form an ethics committee. First meeting? Scheduled to be held in someone's garage because nobody trusted the clubhouse anymore. Funny how that works. It's been 3 months since the incident, as folks around here like to call it. Always with a capital I, like it's a weather event or a biblical plague. People still ask me about it in town. At the feed store, someone will lean in, lower their voice like they're talking about a local haunting and whisper, "You're that ranch guy with the manure trap, right?" "Depends who's asking," I usually say, and wink. Life went back to normal mostly. The pasture grew in nice after spring rains. The cows stopped jumping at drones and Jesse went back to his usual teenage nonsense. Except now his YouTube channel is pulling in more than a few $100 a month. He called it Defensive Agriculture, and his latest upload, How to Install a Legal Trap Gate Without Violating State Ordinance, has over 1 million views. He even got a sponsorship offer from a fence company, told them we'd only accept payment in barbed wire and beef jerky. As for the HOA, they're still licking their wounds. The new board, led by a quiet librarian named Dolores, hasn't sent us a single letter. In fact, they removed the Southern Community Access Corridor from their site plan entirely. It now ends 200 feet short of our fence, marked with a dotted line labeled Unwelcome Frontier. Jesse wants to get a plaque made. Funny thing is, people in Silver Ridge actually started talking to us. Real conversations, not passive-aggressive notes on windshields. A couple neighbors even came out for coffee one morning. They brought cinnamon rolls and a very sheepish apology. "We didn't know," one of them said. "We thought you were just some angry old coot." I took a bite of roll. I am an angry old coot, but I read contracts. One of the dads from Silver Ridge asked if Jesse would give a digital safety talk to the local homeschool group. He said, "You're the kid who exposed the HOA, right?" Jesse puffed up like a barn cat on a hot tin roof. Even Ray got in on the fun. He printed T-shirts that say, "Private property means private consequences." He sold out in 3 days. But the moment that really brought it full circle came one sunny Saturday. We were hosting a little BBQ, just family, a few neighbors, Ray, and that one animal control guy who kept showing up for random checks but always left with a steak. Jesse was manning the grill. I was tuning the porch radio. Then we heard it. Another SUV. Same model, same color, same tinted windows. It turned down our drive slow. Everyone froze, then the doors opened, and out stepped a camera crew. Turns out some reality TV show wanted to option our story. American Resistance Backyard Legends. Their producer, guy with 2 perfect teeth and a blazer in 90-degree heat, asked if I'd be willing to recreate the trap scene for dramatic purposes. Jesse's eyes lit up. "We still have the manure tank, Grandpa." I looked the producer up and down, then said, "Sure, but this time, you're playing the trespasser." He declined, but they filmed anyway, and this time, I wore my best hat, the one Jesse made for me after the hearing. Black felt, silver band, embroidered in red. Not a member. We raised our glasses that evening under a sky so big it made you feel small. And just for a moment, there was no HOA, no cameras, no legal threats. Just land, laughter, and the sound of someone accidentally stepping in the one patch of leftover muck we never cleaned up. "Jesse," I called, "did you forget to drain the lower valve?" He looked guilty. "I thought it was empty," we all howled. And right then I realized something. They may own their sidewalks and their bylaws and their neat little sign. But out here, we own something better. We own peace, the earned kind.